Good morning. This is Bill Bullock coming to you live from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. And we are here for the sixth installment, or the sixth episode, as you may say, of Walking in the Light, discovering the secret wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. The creator of the universe is a great storyteller, and oh, does he have stories to tell. The reason he tells these stories and gives us them in written form in the Torah so we can study them every year and relive them every year is because through stories he connects with us on a relational level. We begin to interact with him in the stories, interact with the stories and the story characters themselves, and so he begins his entire revelatory scheme with testimonies, stories, about who he is and what he's done, how he's related to human beings in the past, and how, therefore, we can assume, we can know that he's going to interact with human beings, including us, in the future. Well, this is the sixth week of the Torah cycle, Parsha Toldot. Toldot is a Hebrew word that has been used as the title of this entire section, which is 25:19 of Genesis, chapter 25, verse 19 of Genesis, through chapter 28, verse 9 of Genesis. So about four-ish chapters worth of his Torah. The stories are just continually running and flowing. They're beautiful stories, they're familiar stories, but through these stories we're supposed to come to know the Holy One, who he is, who we are, therefore, in relation to him and in relationship to the world, and what our mission and calling is upon the earth. So, where are we in the great story? We are in the times of the Gentiles, as they're called. After the Tower of Babel, the Holy One pulled out the unifying factor, which was the Hebrew language that he had created the world with, when he spoke in the Hebrew tongue, that had given the world an impetus to flow together in order to avoid the one world order of the Nimrodian mindset of control and manipulation and the plan of the Holy One. He pulled out the Hebrew language, caused people to divide into their own nation collectives. So we're in the times of the Gentiles, the times of the raging nations, the age of the Goyim. And every nation, every little city-state, every little collective, every group for that matter, every ethnic and cultural group that comes together, they're all eaten up with these three factors, the great triumvirate of darkness, which is Ra, translated into the English language as evil. Shakat, which is translated in the English language as corruption. And Hamas, which is translated in the English language as violence, oppression, cruelty, these volatile actions. And so we have the nations, each one has a different level, but all have the same three things, and those three things motivate them. And together they create their unique versions of nation rage and of peoples who imagine vain things. So the respective levels and expressions of the toxicity triumvirate of Ra, Shakat, and Hamas are different for each nation, but they're still there for each nation. There's no one that's pure. There's no one that's holy. There's no one that's innocent. All the nations are guilty. This is the age of the raging nations, the times of the Gentiles. Now, the Holy One is not going to leave the situation, has chosen not to leave the situation without a pressure release, and without a hope of redemption and a hope of reunification of the nations at some point under Mashiach, under another plan that will overcome the Nimrodian negativity of the one world order under Nimrod. So the Holy One is going to provide a solution, and he has been introducing us over the past 3 weeks of our studies now to his solution. He is introducing a pan-national, pan-ethnic, pan-racial, pan-cultural people, a hope for mankind people, founded upon the foundation of Abraham and Sarah and the covenant the Holy One made with that couple. And now, as of last week, we begin to see there's a shift This is a transgenerational covenant. And this second generation of the covenant has now come into play. Yitzhak, Avram's son, and Rivka, his wife, his new wife. So this week in Parsha Toldot, what we'll be talking about is the fact that with the calling of the covenant, with the calling to be this special hope for humankind people that rises above and that provides a model of a more excellent way, with this calling and this covenant blessing upon our life come high levels of training protocols. We must be more responsible and more responsive to the Creator's calling and to His direction than the world. The nations don't need to do that. Well, they should, but they don't want to do that. But we have built into us, by virtue of our covenant identity and our communications with the Holy One, and of our knowing these stories and letting these stories of the kingdom and of the Holy One's way infiltrate our spirit and guide us and animate us, we have now a calling to a higher level training protocol. This week in Parsha Toldot, we're going to take that training protocol, training discipline, to another level. The Holy One wants to prepare us to deal with competitive enmity within our own households and within our own people group. Competitive enmity. But that's not all. There's a greater force that we need to deal with. A competitive enmity is basically just a preparation for the greater hostility, the ethno-cultural hostility of the nation rage. When it comes directed against us specifically. I call it covenant envy. You could also call it covenant denial or covenant rejection. But these higher level training protocols are being taught to us through these stories. And the stories will be of Yitzhak, Rivka, Yaakov, Esav, and the dealings then and the ethno-cultural hostility will be with the Philistines of Gerar under Avimelech. And we'll see how these things are introduced into our lives, into our consciousness, and see that we are not called to react in the flesh against them, either the competitive enmity from our own brethren or our own family members, or the ethno-cultural hostility that comes from those who have covenant envy, covenant denial modality, covenant rejection approach to life. Toldot. What does the word mean? It's obviously a plural in Hebrew when you have a ot at the end of it. Of a noun, it's a plural, and it's in the feminine gender, if that means anything to the Hebrew speakers out there. Toldot, a plural of something. What is it plural of? Plural of the word yalad, a verb which means to bring forth offspring. It involves the whole process of reproduction on both sides of the partnership. Usually with reproduction, there's a male member and a female member, and each one plays a part and invests a certain element into the process of reproduction. So, Toldot is the continual reproduction and the parts people play, and therefore the stories people tell. We're talking about the total substance and quality and effect or impact of a human life on both sides. What goes into making life go on? Toldot. What goes in? What has gone in to making life go on? So if we view a life on both sides of the equation, the maleness and the femaleness, through the Creator's eternal, beyond the veil perspective, and we take into consideration the lasting impact that life is designed to have on other bloodlines, on the family line, on the nations, on the ecosystem of Earth. We take into consideration these factors. We add all the great things that a life can mean, or the bad things a life can inflict. That's the Toldot. So we're talking about the Toldot of Yitzhak. What will be the Toldot? What will be the life story? What will be the falling out of all the things that happened to Yitzhak? And we'll talk about that some this week. The stories of Toldot are generation-shaping stories, because what we see and read about in the lives of our patriarchs, like Yitzhak and Yaakov and Abraham before him, or Sarah and Rivka, as our matriarchs, and Rachel and Leah later will become. As we read these stories about these patriarchs and matriarchs, we understand their stories are actually shaping our story. We are them. and we will encounter, with the names may be changed and the circumstances may vary slightly, we will encounter the same difficulties and the same challenges and the same opportunities that they were given, because that's the covenant. That's the way the covenant repeats itself, generation after generation. That's the Toldot. That's the generation shaping stories. So the stories that introduce us to our greatest deployment challenges are coming soon now. They're in this portion we study this week. The age of raging nations is here, and we're about to get right up in the middle of it. The first thing we'll deal with is what I call Esavian opposition. The opposition of Esau, as he's called in the Western world. Esau opposition is, he's so like us, but yet he's so unlike us. He's one of us, but yet he's significantly against us. He is called to the same calling we're called to, but yet he does not walk in it and will not walk in it, and thinks he has the superior way. The Esavian opposition, escalating, enduring enmity from a personal nemesis, often within one's own family or generation. And that's not all. Esavian opposition would be the first thing we talk about. Yaakov and Esau, and how they struggled against each other, and how they were totally different, and yet they were of the same seed and of the same covenant calling. Why couldn't they both flow and cooperate and collaborate? Esavian opposition. And the second part of it is beyond Esavian opposition, which was just a training ground for the greater one, which is Gerarian syndrome. Covenant envy, intense ethno-cultural hostility, raging nation volatility with seed time and harvest cycles that show some days, some years, some decades. It's really, really bad. The parsha will begin with the words Ele Toldot Yitzhak ben Avram. Ele Toldot Yitzhak ben Avram. These are the stories, these are the accounts, these are the generation transcending narratives involving Yitzhak, son of Avram. Now, the beginning of the parsha will introduce the two competing personas. Let me, what happens, the story, is that initially after Yitzhak and Rivka marry, Rivka is unable to bear children for 20 years. For 20 years she is barren. Torah says she has her womb plucked up by the creator of the universe. There's a strategic time she is to give birth, and it hadn't reached that time for the first 20 years. And during that period of time, Yitzhak prays. He passionately intercedes. He cries out to the Holy One for his bride. And so we see this aspect of Yitzhak as being one who passionately cries out. He was said last week that he loved Rivka, and now we're going to see his love play out with how he encounters the creator of the universe and engages with the creator of the universe on her behalf. Now, obviously, the creator doesn't rush things. He knows Yitzhak's cry. He hears Yitzhak's cry, and he's going to answer it. He's going to do it at the proper time, and that's 20 years into the marriage. So 20 years into the marriage, the prayers are answered, and the womb is restored, and Rivka is carrying a life force, Yaakov's life force. But something's going wrong. Something's not right in the womb, as you recall the story. There is a jostling, there is a movement, it's violent inside, and pain and great trauma is going on inside, and she can't see what's going on, Rivka, that is. She cannot see what's going on. Of course, she has never been pregnant before, but she's been around people who were pregnant, I'm sure. So but she doesn't understand why this is going on inside of her. And so she begins to cry out, and she begins to seek counsel, and the Holy One speaks to her and tells her not the biological issues that are going on, but the spiritual issues that are happening inside of her. That there are twins inside of her, and they are jostling for position in a spiritual as well as a biological and a physical sense. And that they will compete against each other. They will do this. There are really two great nations that are going to come forth from her womb. And the elder will ultimately serve the younger. And those words really probably didn't provide too much comfort for Rivka. I mean, she's still dealing with this thing going on inside of her belly, and her body is being affected by it. But nevertheless, she proceeds and she goes forward with the pregnancy, and eventually she does give birth. And the beautiful day of giving birth, relief somewhat from the wrestling going on in her belly. And so out comes the first child, and he's hairy and he's ruddy and he's bright complexion and he's strong, and he's big, and they call him Esau, as it goes in the Western world. But attached to him, before they can finish his birth, there's something grabbing a hold of his heel, and there's a hand of another infant grabbing his heel, and that one is not hairy, and is not seem to be as large as it's not an identical twin to him. It looks different, and yet it comes from the same womb and the same seeds. And so as this other child comes forth, they call him Yaakov, the grabber of the heel, the one who will take the heel. And so these are the two children that are born, and boy, they come out and they're totally different in their approach to life. Esau is the mighty hunter. He is kind of Nimrodian in the sense that his life is outdoors, and it's game, and everything's a conquest to Esau. Yaakov is a manager, a businessman. He stays in the tents. He manages things. He thinks. He's a thinker. He's a mild man. He's a Ishtam. He is a man who doesn't create drama by himself, not fully run by emotions and appetites and urges and hormones. He's in control of his faculties, and he handles himself well. And we see that among the two, Yitzhak seems to be favoring. He pays more attention to and gives more of his time and his encouragement to Esau. And there are midrashic reasons for that, which I don't have time to go into. I suggest you might want to look into some of the midrashim, not to tell you they're absolutely 100% true, but to explain to you why there are times when one parent will invest more time and effort into the life of one child versus another. But contrary to what Yitzhak was doing with regard to putting time and effort and energy and special interest into the life of Esau, Rivka is doing the exact same with Yaakov, and so that's what's happening. We're having sort of a inner war between, but without violence, but just a competition. We have this competitive envy, competitive nature between these two sons. So that's where we start. That's the first part of our study, the Esavian opposition, escalating and enduring an enmity from a member of your own family. So we're going to see there's within the kingdom, within the covenant people, there are going to be those who arise who are Esavian in their character and their behavior. They're fleshly. They're driven by their appetites. They like to. They have a bloodlust, a wanderlust about them. They're not disciplined to the covenant. They're not disciplined to the Torah. They're not disciplined to the sound of the voice of the Creator of the universe. They're not disciplined to the plan of the Creator of the universe to bring about the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, household by household, family by family, individual by individual, as many as will come to the sound of the Creator's voice. They are not into that. They are into pleasing themselves and doing things and accomplishing things that make them look good in the front of the world or make them feel like they have accomplished things in the world. That's the Esavian personality. And then there's the Yaakovian personality, which is surrender of self-will, surrender of self-promotion, of subordination of feelings and emotions and appetites and urges to the greater plan. Now, that takes a while to develop, and it doesn't always look pretty as it's developing, because there has to be a process of subordination of emotions. There's a process of subordination of personal will. Sometimes that process gets ugly as it's happening. So, we're learning from the Esavian situation, and we're still in the first part of this story. We're going to get into chapter 26. This is all 25. Chapter 26, we're going to see that this same kind of enmity is morphed into something much greater, ethno-cultural enmity, whenever we're seeing Yitzhak and Rivka dealing with the people of Gerar who have covenant envy in general, and hate everything that is Hebrew about them. So let's talk about this escalating, enduring enmity that we're going to face. One from Esavians and one from the Gerarians in the world. It will be that. You've probably experienced it recently. You're probably watching it on the world news develop. If it's not Esavian enmity, it is Gerarian, worldwide nation rage against Israel, against Yaakov, against the covenant people. Well, that's just the way the world is designed to work. That is a motivational factor. The Holy One knows that that iron sharpens iron, that we will not be motivated solely by love of Him or by desire to fulfill the covenant. No, we need a little motivation coming from outside I need to see what's happening to people, how miserable they really are. We need to see the pain. We need to see the pathology at work in order to be motivated to move forward with the plan whenever we would get tired, or we would get weary, or we would get effectively disabled by virtue of circumstances or situations. Escalating, enduring enmity from a nemesis. This is what life is really all about. It's not a rose garden of pleasure. Life is about learning to navigate enduring enmity from people within our community and without our community. And that enduring, escalating enmity will eventually erupt into full-blown, what the world calls anti-Semitism. I really believe that's the wrong word, and maybe if it was ever a right word, it's overused and misused and no longer effective in discussing what really is going on. It's covenant envy, covenant denial, covenant rejection. The people, it's not about being anti-Semitic. It's about hating anything Hebrew, anything that smacks of a special relationship between the Creator of the universe and the people descended from Avram, anything that smacks of a great plan that involves a model nation coming forth from Avram and Sarah, Rivka, and Yaakov, and Rachel and Leah. So, what is enmity? What is this all about? What is this enmity from a nemesis? One-on-one counterbalance. Nemesis, an Esav-like iron sharpening iron archetype for every Israeli in the rough, every Israel in the rough, every Yosef in the rough, every covenant partner, every Moshe in the rough, every David in the rough. Among the covenant people will have his nemesis or her nemesis. Every Esther will have her nemesis. Every Ruth will have her nemesis. We will see these things developing over the course of the times, of the stories that were told by the Creator of the universe. This too is designed for tov, for good. It is a part of our training as His Majesty's Special Forces. Let's talk about a nemesis. In literary form, and we're talking about stories the Creator is telling us, and that those stories are going to broaden into great schemes of revelation, but they're all based upon the same story. But what is a nemesis in a literary context, in a story-like context? In the most interesting and enduring stories of the world, the lead human characters have to deal with a personal oppositional nemesis character. Superman, Lex Luthor, Batman, Catwoman, the Riddler. He had several. These are just I'm just using these mythical superheroes of American literature to give you the idea. Every lead human character in the great drama has to have a personal oppositional nemesis character, and having that character to struggle against makes for a good story. It helps to bring out the good traits, but also reveal some of the bad traits that need to be dealt with in the lead character. It introduces a deeply personal, deeply challenging part of the story that engages us, and we connect with the lead character and his struggle against this nemesis character. Now, the nemesis character in this case is, first of all, Esav, and second of all, the people, the entire ethnocultural group, represented by, in this case, by Gerar. But it could be any people. It could be, and I'm not going to name names, but you know people who are adverse to the Hebrew people in general, and I'll let you fill in the blanks for that. No need for me to get political or ideological or ethnic with you. But the later part, this when they get personal and ethnic on you, and they try to come at you just because you're Hebrew, right? They come at everything you do because it's Hebraic in its nature. Then you understand what we've moved into ethno-cultural raging nation hostility beyond the Asabian part of within our own group. Now we're dealing with intense ethno-cultural raging nation hostility. You see, we are the few that counterbalance the many. We will never be in a majority, not until the Messianic kingdom comes. We are always a minority. We should never think of ourselves as entitled. We should never think of ourselves as privileged. We should never think of ourselves as somehow able to direct and litigate and legislate people's behaviors. We are the minority. We are designed to function as a minority. We do our best work as a minority who is under the thumb of some other nation, or at least they think we're under their thumb. Never being in the majority, never having any privilege other than the blessing that flows from the covenant of Abraham. Never being in charge of the direction of an economy or of a nation or of a group unless the Holy One specifically puts us there for a purpose, like he will eventually with Joseph and Mashiach. Not being able to set the narrative because other people are setting the narratives for us. This is our law. This is why the ethnocultural raging nation hostility against us is so noticeable, because they can set the narrative. They can frame the vocabulary. They can set the mood of the masses. They can incite. They can cause a rebel rousing to come rise from the masses against us. They can brainwash. They can indoctrinate us, and they can turn and morph a peaceful people even into from the river to the sea raging mob. The basis of it, as I've said before, is covenant envy, covenant denial. You could call it covenant rejection. Covenant envy is a pathologically narcissistic condition. It's an I and my kind know better than God condition. You can see how dangerous it is, because that's what it says. I and my kind, my group, my nation, my ideology, my ethnic group, whoever it is, my people can do better than God. We have a better idea for fixing the world, or at least making the world function the way we want it to. This is really never fixing the world unless it's the covenant way. This is the pathology behind the covenant envy, covenant rejection, covenant denial, anti-Semitism, if you want to still call it that. Affected persons and groups that have been touched by covenant envy, covenant denial, covenant rejection, anti-Semitism, feel insulted, if not threatened, by anything Hebraic in origin or essence. They pathologically, for reasons they can't even understand, hate and deny and reject and despise and react violently against anyone or anything that they believe to be of a Hebraic origin or essence. Covenant envy, covenant denial, covenant rejection, anti-Semitism are thus not just only hatred for Jewish people. They're the toxic disdain of anti-Semitism, covenant envy, extends to everything and every practice and every person associated with us. So let's talk about, we need to understand there are flashpoints. The covenant envy people, the people of the raging nations, ethno-cultural hostility to us, hate these things, and you need to understand this. But yet we need to cling to these things all the more. The things that they hate are the very things that make us who we are. Number one, Lashon HaKodesh. Well, number one is our relationship with the Creator of the universe. But I'll go beyond that. If the fact that we have this relationship with the Creator of the universe and a special calling in His eyes, that's number one. Number two, Lashon Kodesh, the Hebrew language. The language He spoke, the Creator that is, spoke whenever He created everything that is to be made. The language He spoke to Avram, the language He spoke to Yitzhak in this week's Parsha, the language He spoke to Rivka in this week's Parsha, the language He will speak to Yaakov over the course of the seasons, to Moshe, to David, to the prophets, to Mashiach, to His disciples. The one who spoke in Hebrew. And this is the power. See, the Hebrew language was taken out of the world at the Tower of Babel, and now only we have it. As we're being introduced to us by virtue of the covenant relationship. Lashon HaKodesh. We have to hold on to it. Love the Hebrew language. It is your life force. It is your life blood. It is what makes you special in actual practice. So the fact that you have the relationship with the Holy One, it makes you special in the first instance. But in actual practice and view of the nations, they see that you have the Hebrew language. And it is beautiful, and it's deep, and it far transcends the revelatory capacity of any earthly language that they could come up with. So beyond our relationship with the Holy One, the covenant, the Lashon Kodesh, the holy language, is the Torah, the storybook, the instruction manual, the love letter of the Creator of the universe. We are given it. What a precious treasure. What a cherished treasure that is. The world hates it that we have the Torah. The world hates it that we have the holy Hebrew language. But we're not through yet. So, Lashon HaKodesh, Torah, the seventh day Shabbat. The world hates the fact that we would on rest, not just rest, that we would actually do something. We would bask in heaven's light. We would bask in heaven's glow. We would bask in heaven's sweetness and the King's pleasure and treasure and delight. We would bask in that on the seventh day of every week. Every week we get to do that. And that is a subject of covenant envy for them. And they don't understand it. They want to change the day. They want to redefine what it means, to limit it to a matter of physical rest, as opposed to what it's designed to be, a total rejuvenation of renewing of the person by virtue of being able to bask in the heaven's light. So the Lashon HaKodesh, the holy Hebrew language, the Torah, the seventh, don't ever let these things slip away from you. This is what makes you who you are. This is what will make you hated, but this is what makes you who you are. And if you give up on these things, you cease to be who you were created to be. You become more Esavian than you are Yacovian. But we're not through yet. Brit Milah, the eighth day circumcision, the surrendering of the flesh, the covenant, the reminder of all days, every day, multiple times a day, that we are in covenant with the Creator of the universe, the Brit Milah. The Moedim, the sometimes they're called festivals, but they're scheduled and themed times of just us, with us and the Creator. Special times that are themed celebrations of getting together with the Creator. That's what the Moedim are. The world does not like them. The world does not understand them. The world does not want us to have them. The world wants to stop it. This is part of the covenant envy, covenant rejection, covenant denial, anti-Semitism approach. I'm going to go with another one now. I want to tell you another part that makes us who we are. And the saying of the word is going to offend some of the Esavians among you. And I'm going to tell you the next one is Hanukkah. I'm not talking about the way you light candles or the way you talk about a miracle of the oil. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what Hanukkah really is, the season of rededication to covenant and preparation of every household, every child in the faith, in the community, for coming persecution, to stand strong and stand tall in the face of that persecution, and to be at their best when the rest of the world is at their worst. That's what Hanukkah is all about, preparing for the abomination of desolation and for the latter days and for our mission, which will be most important in the most difficult, trying days of the world. So Hanukkah is hold on to it. Don't get into arguments about whether you should light a candle a certain way, or whether you should call a certain candle a hamash, or what you should do, or those are nonsense issues of the brain, of the pseudo-intellectual mind that's confused and narcissistic. The issue really is: are you going to prepare your house and your children and yourselves for the coming persecution? Are you going to prepare them for our greatest hour, which will be at a time the world needs most someone to be wise, an adult in the room? The next one that we hold on to, the next important Hebrew thing that makes us who we are, is Purim, Tisha B'Av, and then the whole realm of Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, Tshuva, as it's sometimes called by the Ashkenazi, Tshuva. But it's teshuva is the way it would be pronounced, I suppose, by the Sephardic. But the idea of teshuva is repentance. But repentance is a product of the mind, of an operation of the pseudo intellect. Teshuva is a return to the Holy One. Repentance is about hating your sin. Teshuva is about loving your God, about loving your reason to be alive by virtue of his calling upon your life. Teshuvah is returning, not repenting. Repenting is an English Western mindset. So the world hates Teshuvah, but they love repentance because it lets them feel better about themselves. Teshuvah is a total change, return back to eventual Edenic calling and plan. Tefillah, the world loves to talk about prayer. The other nations like to talk about prayer. They hate you when you talk about tefillah. Tefillah means we are not telling the creator of the universe what he should do. We are responding to him, yielding to him, becoming one with him in thought and action and speech in such a way that we actually have the ability to reflect him and his way and do his will upon the earth. Tzedakah, it's called righteousness by the Western world. They don't understand what tzedakah really means. Understand tzedakah, the ability to set things right, this vision to see what needs to be done in a given situation to bring about a good in the world. That's tzedakah. And that's the idea. We have a calling to that. If we ever lose that calling and get involved in ideological, political, ethnic, cultural wars or debates or discussions, we lose the ability to focus on what needs to be done to make things move forward in the great plan. And then with tzedakah and tefillah and teshuvah come tikkun, the idea of preparation, always being about reparation. The world hates that about us. The world wants us to be like them. They complain. They just try to find fault and blame on people. They get emotionally upset and offended and hold on to their offenses and go into outrage. That's what they want. But the Hebrew mindset, the Hebrew way is tikkun, to say, okay, this is the situation on the ground that we have now. But our calling is bigger than this. Our calling is to bring about some level of repair, restoration, healing. First of all, of each individual we contact, the tikkun nefesh, and ourselves, and our family members, and everyone we touch. And it's beyond tikkun nefesh, it's tikkun eretz. We're to see what's going on in the environment, in the land, and how can we make this land more fruitful, more productive for generations to come. More according to the divine plan. Tikkun Adam, tikkun mankind as a species. How can we improve the lot of mankind and the ways of mankind, the thought processes and the interactions between the Holy One and mankind? How can we do that? Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Adam, and finally Tikkun Olam. I'm going to go forward. Mikvah. The world substitutes other things besides the mikvah, the total submission and surrender of the soul, voluntary surrender of the soul to the Holy One. They substitute other ordinances and sacraments for that. Kashrut, the idea of letting the Holy One decide what is food for us, what is nurture to us, and what is not there. Just because it may be appetizing or tasty to our appetite, to our palate, does not mean it's food. It's food is what the Holy One tells us it is. Tzitzit, the idea of wearing the fringes. Zniut, the idea of modesty, not trying to showcase things that will attract people to our flesh or our pseudo-intellect, but instead try to present ourselves with modesty and with honor to the Holy One who created us, to the person we're designed to be, and not try to attract improper views. Hebrew meditation. But I'm going through the list of things here that it makes us Hebrew. I'm going to go meditation protocols like the Haggadah, how to meditate on the Torah day and night, as the psalmist talked about, or as Joshua was told to do. Our covenantal attachment to Eretz Israel. They hate that. The world hates the fact that we are covenantally attached, bonded with Eretz, the land of Israel. That we can't separate that, and we should never try to separate that or give up on that. That's what makes us who we are. It's a part of the grand plan. Also, our eternal connection to the city of Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, city of gold. This is our capital city. This is our Messiah's capital city. We cannot separate from it. We have a real connection to it, and the world cannot understand it and hates it and wants to rebel against it, especially those who have the ethno-cultural hostility called covenant envy or anti-Semitism. Beyond that, the eternal connection to Jerusalem is our vision, the vision the Holy One's given us for a great regathering of seed at the end of days, of coming forth, a return from the various four corners of the earth, coming back to Israel, back home, the great redemption at the end of the age. And with that, a great harvest of Holy One worshiping, Torah practicing foreigners who have voluntarily surrendered, joined with us, not by force, not by sword, by the beauty of the model we have hopefully set in our sojourns among the nations, to those who come willingly to the Holy One to join with us in worshiping, serving Him. And then that will bring about the reunification of the nations. This is part of what makes us who we are. We believe in the reunification of the nations, the reversal of the Tower of Babel under Mashiach, under one who will not be a Nimrodian, who will not focus on one world order as men can control and manipulate, but under the willing, steady, firm, and beautiful, loving hand of Mashiach, the representative of the King. Well, that's the things that the world hates. That's the Gerarian mindset and worldview cannot stomach or tolerate that. And this is the season of the year, as we begin to study these stories in Parshat Toldot, that we begin to understand this is an important part of our training as His Majesty's Special Forces teams. There are flashpoints that the world is going to try to throw at us. And this time of the year, they become very prominent and pronounced. I mentioned Hanukkah, and I know it offended some of my Esavian leaning brethren among the followers. I didn't mean to offend you, but I do need to say these things. Without understanding the story of the Maccabees and the Hanukkah story and the patterns of the abomination of desolation and the indoctrinated minions of Antiochus Epiphanes as the Antichrist figure of Hebrew literature, if you don't understand that, then you really will not be able to prepare your family appropriately. And if you don't practice it regularly, it will be very difficult for you to be able to rise to the occasion when the time comes. So let's talk about what the flashpoints of the world are, where they tend to try to stop us, where their covenant envy turns to covenant sabotage. I'm going to give you 5 of these invasive fulcrum points of syncretism that go with this season that you begin to see around you at this time of year. First is the gymnasium, or anything having to do with sports. I know what weekend this is in the Western world. You do too. You know what people watch on television or on the internet in this time of year. The first thing they watch is football games. They watch sporting events. Physical, athletic prowess on the field, displays of triumphant spiking footballs, tragedy, of emotional trauma whenever your team didn't win. You understand how the nations are trying to pull us away from our mission and our calling by having us focus on sporting events and sporting contests and the emotions that go with it. And then there's the second is beyond the gymnasium is with the amphitheater, the world of entertainment. You see new movies come out this time of year, and you see all the plays that are changing the screen. This is and concerts and different things where people want to get entertained. Entertainment and sports are mind-numbing activities. As long as we can participate in them, as long as we do not get caught up in the drama of them, either the gymnasium or the amphitheater, either the sporting world or the celebrity-focused entertainment world. The third, beyond the gymnasium and the amphitheater, the third invasive fulcrum point of syncretism the world throws at us this time of the year is the forum, the political discussions, emphasis on abstract concepts, ideas, theories, political agendas, morality definitions, divisions, ivory tower thinking, talking in generalities, false finding, no practical discussions at all theoretical discussions. The forum begins to take us and sap away our energy. We are supposed to be about tikkun. We're supposed to be about tzedakah. We're supposed to be about all the things of actual fixing the world. And forum tells you just what's wrong with the world and how to argue over what's wrong with the world. You see, and if religion is the same way. Religion is also becomes when it becomes intellectual, when it becomes debating, when it becomes arguing it over doctrines and theologies, it becomes part of the forum. Fulcrum point of syncretism in the world. It's to sap out our energy of being members of the covenant. The fourth of the five main invasive fulcrum points is the university or the education system. Public education, private education, designed to focus the attention on everything from the songs and the literary talent of Beyonce and Taylor Swift to science and medicine and law. The university, emphasis on empirical data, sophistry and propaganda, elitist arrogance, indoctrination, and partying with alcohol and drugs. The university syndrome, the public education syndrome. Focus on what? Parties and relationships, but boy-girl relationships, boy-boy relationships, girl-girl relationships, all this stuff that flows in this distraction of the university educational systems. And then fifth is the marketplace. Extreme emphasis, overemphasis on material things, luxuries, novelties, taxation, government regulation, dependence on state and federal laws and regulations, dependence on the government in general for anything other than national boundary protection. Okay, that's the story we have to deal with. It's a tale as old as time, someone once said. A song as old as rhyme. Beauty and the Beast. Beloved, we're called to be the beauty in the story. There's plenty of people to step into line to become and act as the Beast. Let's do our call to worship, and then we'll move on into the depth of what the stories are really about. Our call to worship is the Barak Hu. It is the blessing read before reading from the Torah line by line. Barak Hu Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Vakar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. So do not hide your instructions for living from us. And now gather round, children of the Most High, because it's story time again. The Holy One's telling us stories. And last week we left off in the time when Sarah and Avram had passed away, and Yitzhak and Rivka were taking on the position of successor covenant partners. The bones of Avram and Sarah are buried in the cave of Machpelah near Hebron. Yitzhak has taken Rivka as a bride, and now the next critical phase of the Creator's grand plan for the redemption and restoration of earth and mankind is about to be unveiled. The second generation special service unit of the Creator universe is on the clock. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because we wouldn't have a mission if they weren't here, we're not the only players in the game. We're not the only people in the world. We have to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, and that's what we're being taught by the stories of Parsha Toldot. At the end of the Parsha last week, in chapter 25, verses 16 through 18, there were the sons of Yishmael. These were the sons of Yishmael, and these were their names by their towns, by their settlements, and they had 12 princes according to their nations, their goyim mindsets. And these were the years of the life of Yishmael, 137 years, and he breathed his last, and he died, and was gathered to his people, but his descendants dwell from Havilah as far as Shur, which is to the east of Egypt, as you go toward Assyria, and he died in the presence of many brethren, of all his brethren. Well, now we have this idea that we are counterbalancing someone, and we see that it comes out of the seed of Ishmael would be our one counterbalance, but we're going to have more than that. So, behold, Rivka and Yitzhak are newlyweds. We have a new matriarch team. What do we need to know about them? Here's the story. Here's the Hebrew. I'll give it to you as it's written in the Hebrew text, as 25:19 and beyond, and I'll translate it into English as best I can on the spur of the moment. Ve'ele Toldot Yitzhak ben Avram. And these are the stories, the accounts, the generations transcending narratives that pertain to Yitzhak, Isaac as he's called in the Western world, the son of Avram, Abraham. Avram holid et Yitzhak. Abraham provided the seed out of which Yitzhak developed. He was a covenant continuity person. Now, through the words Ela Toldot Yitzhak, Ele HaToldot Yitzhak, the writer of the Torah is introducing us to the impact of the life of the actions of Yitzhak on the people and the places of his lifetime. It's also explaining or introducing the tremendous impact Yitzhak's story and Yaakov's story following will have upon the people and places and the cultures of our world, and upon the people and the places and the cultures that make up the world in which our children will live and our children's children will live. And it goes on, Vayehi Yitzhak ben Arba'im Shana, and it came to pass when Yitzhak was 40 years of age, Bekakto et Rivka bat Betuel ha'arami mid Padan Aram. And he took Rivka, the daughter of Betuel the Aramean, from Padan Aram, Akot Lavan ha'arami lo leisha, the sister of Lavan the Aramean. He took her for his wife. This is going to be the story. We have Yitzhak and we have Rivka. And we see that as they go forth, we're going to find that they have to deal with troubles of life, difficult aspects of life, but they also deal with many pleasures. The antithesis initiative is what I want to talk about in our last few moments together. We need to know we will have an antithesis, we will have a nemesis, we will have opposition in this world. The Messiah taught us, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. We are not to be victims of antithesis or opposition or hatred or covenant envy. We're not victims of that. We are enlivened by that. We are given our fullest extent of our ability to influence the world through that. Antithesis initiative. In literature, there's what's called a foil motif. The introduction of somebody who will diametrically oppose and play the foil for the protagonist of the story. In this case, for Yitzhak and for Rivka. The pairing of a protagonist character and a foil character provides context and contrast and conflict for the story that the creator is trying to tell. Through the foil motif, the author, the creator in this case, illustrates the traits and values and motivations of his protagonist through having that protagonist challenged and opposed and even hated in some situations by another character or series of characters. The challenge posed by a foil character or a foil culture draws out the protagonist's inner qualities, exposes his strengths, and allows him to find and understand and work through his weaknesses. So this is the parsha. Toldot is the parsha of antithesis motivation. The Holy One knows that love of Him is not enough to motivate us to our highest level. Love of Him will get us started and hold us solid, but our highest level of motivation, when we need it most, what will come forth because we're motivated by our antithesis, overcoming, resolving conflicts with those who are hostile to us and adversarial cultures. All right. So we go on with the text. Vaye'etar Yitzhak la'Adonai, and Yitzhak interceded, prayed passionately unto and before the Holy One. Le'nachach ishto ki akarahi, in front of, in regard to his wife, because she was barren, her womb had been plucked up. Vaye'atar lo Adonai v'tahar Rivka ishto, and the Holy One had closed her womb, but then Rivka, his wife, conceived, gave birth. Now that happened, and Rivka gets concerned because of what's going on inside of her. It's tumultuous inside of her. And the children began to clash violently within her. And she said, so how is it to be? Is this the way it's going to be with me? And she went to pursue and seek and inquire wisdom from the Holy One. And the Holy One said to her, these are the first words of the Creator of the universe, Hebrew words being spoken, empowering Rivka. Shne goyim bevinech. Two nations, two goyim, ethnicities and bloodlines are inside your womb. Ushne le'umim mimeyach vipa redu. And two people groups, two nations, two group of people will separate from your innards. Ule'om milom ye'ematz, and the one people will be stronger than the other. The Rav Yarod Zair, and the older, the greater will serve the younger or the weaker. Well, that's the story that we deal with regard to Esau, and we'll see that Esau becomes the foil character for Yaakov. And we should probably realize we all have a foil character or two within our own family, our own community, our own ethnicity that are sabotaging us, that are directing us the exact opposite way. They are going the exact opposite way. They are not holding on to the Hebrew things I mentioned earlier in the Hebrew thought. And their main focus of life is not real relationship with the Creator. It's quarreling, it's power, it's having control. Well, that's that. And then we go on into the issue of dealing with the nation of Gerar. A famine arises in the land around Be'er Lahoiroi, where the young couple of Yitzhak and Rivka were living, and they had to go to find food. They were told by the Holy One not to go to Egypt, but to go and sojourn in the land of Gerar. And then once there, they walk out the famine, but they find that as they prosper, because the covenant brings the prosperity, the covenant brings fruitfulness. As long as we follow the instructions of the words, the empowerment of the word, the Hebrew words the Holy One speaks over us, they bring about a cooperation between the land, the earth, and the environment and us, and there is a ability to bring about sustenance and provision, and that was happening, and right in front of the people of Gerar, and they were very angry and very jealous, and covenant envy began to develop, and it was widespread from the leaders down to the people. There was indoctrination, and the herdsmen of Gerar became like indoctrinated warriors on their behalf. So we had a situation where if they saw a well that Yitzhak had dug, they saw some improvement to the earth that they had done. It didn't matter whether it would even spite their own face and shut the water off for their own families and their own flocks. They would stop up the wells, and they would chase Yitzhak and his family away. Well, Yitzhak learned not to react in kind. We must learn the same thing. We must do what is necessary to preserve our culture, but we need not to act in anger, offense, or outrage. We need not to respond in kind. Don't trade evil for evil, repay evil for evil. Don't do atrocities because they do atrocities. Don't do those sorts of things. Instead, remember, we're here to be the model of the more excellent way. We have to do, like they do, what we have to do to survive. But beyond survival, we measure our responses by virtue of the covenant. We think, what would the Holy One do, and what does he want to do in this place? What does he want to do in this bloodline? Before we make our decisions as to how far we carry our responses. Well, we're going to get into other issues in this parsha. I don't have time to discuss them with you. You'll have plenty of time. It's early, and you'll have time over the course of the week, hopefully, to discuss those among yourselves, read about them, study about them, maybe even pick up a few midrashes if you wish to about that. Most of all, beloved, before I leave you, let me reinforce this with you. We are not like the rest of the world. We don't live according to the same worldview they do. We're not here for the same reason they think they are. The things that they think are important are not what we think are important. We are here to serve the Creator of the universe and to do His will. We're here to bring Tikkun Nefesh, Tikkun Eretz, Tikkun Adam, and Tikkun Olam. Remember who you are this week. Remember why you're here. And do the will of the Creator in every situation. See you next week.